Welcome to the FLoRA onboarding session. My name is Luke and I will walk you through the task, the project, and what you can expect if you want to become a FLoRA contributor. So first, just so that you are aware a bit of the context, the FORRT library of replication and reproduction attempts is one of many projects from FORRT and from the FORRT Replication Hub. The FORRT Replication Hub is simply a way to organize the projects from FORRT that all want to support replications, and we have divided them into multiple areas. For example, there are tools that help researchers to track replications, one of which is the database that this is about, but we also have tools working with the data of this and another database to allow people to explore replications or discover them. We have a handbook or manuscript templates and a couple of other resources to help people conduct replications and reproductions, and with our own Diamond Open Access journal or us posting comments on Papier in an automated way, emailing researchers. We also have multiple ways to disseminate replications. The overarching goal is to support replications, and with the tracking and the database we want to make them visible, and then once they are visible we can draw attention to them. The basic structure of the FLoRA database is that one row is one pair of an original and a replication study. Below there's an example. There's an original study from the year 2007, and then there are two replications. Each of them have their own outcome, which they define. So the authors who wrote the replications, they say if the results are converging or diverging, similar, dissimilar, successful, failed. And those are all different ways to express the outcomes. We use success, failure, mixed, and a couple of other categories because those are the most widely adopted terms. In this case of the original study, having been replicated by two independent people in 2 different years, this would lead to 2 rows of original and replication studies. The first row would be the original and the replication from 2022, and the second row would be the original again and the replication from 2026. With this structure, we can also have a way where one replication, where one original study was replicated by lots of different studies, and just to make sure if the replication from 2022 replicated 2 studies, so one original from 2007 and maybe then another from 2012, then this would be an extra row. If the replication from 2022 replicates multiple studies from the original study, then their results are aggregated. So for example, let's say the original study included 5 studies, the replication repeated 3 of them, 2 worked, 1 didn't, then the outcome would be a mixed outcome. So the data set is publicly available, it's being updated daily, and those are the most important variables. In green we have variables corresponding to the original study, in blue we have variables corresponding to the replication study. Here you can see the structure again. So the first row we have Kaisch and Gilad 1991, were replicated by Busenitz 1996. We have the reference in APA format, the DOI and the URL for both of these studies that belong together. Then we have an abstract. This is nothing we publish because in lots of cases the copyright lies with the publisher, but this is something we use for validation and internal purposes. And then we have an outcome, and the outcome is determined by the replication authors. You can of course do that in a formal way with statistics, but for FLoRA we are focusing on the judgment by the replication authors because the database encompasses so many different disciplines that we do not have expertise to judge this ourselves or to compute it. In some cases you cannot even compute anything, so we are using the outcome, and which is based on an outcome quote, which most of the time comes from an abstract. So these 3 categories, mixed, successful and failed, those are the most prevalent ones. We do have some special categories. though you will most likely not encounter these. Your job, if you choose to become a FLoRA contributor, will be to validate data, mainly via our gamified app, and I will walk you through this app in a bit. There are also other ways, so you can submit replications or reproductions via our form. And for this, you can go to the FORRT website, go to Replication Hub, submit a replication study, and then you can submit it here. This form will walk you through everything. Or if you are an experienced validator, it can happen that we ask you to work through an entire spreadsheet, which is then focused on one specific large-scale project, because maybe it's we will do this in cases where it's more efficient to have one person work on all similar studies rather than feeding them into our app. And then we recommend that you go to the FORRT Slack if you're not there already. FORRT website, get involved, scroll to the bottom of the page, and there's the open Slack channel. Anybody can join for free. There you can say hello, write a few sentences about yourself in the hello channel, and then you can join the FLoRA Validators channel. And this is where you can ask questions that everybody from the team is on the channel and can respond to them. And you can also discuss with different validators and see what questions the others come up with. You can of course always join us for some of the Fridays co-working sessions from 1 to 2 European time. If you do not have the invite, just send me an email and I send it to you. And we are also using this slot for onboarding. And of course, you can always send us an email if anything is unclear. And we'd rather have you send us an email or ask the question somewhere before you do the validation, rather than having to go back to validated entries and fix errors. The data set, as I said, is publicly available. When you work on it, we will ask you to take a look at the FAQs. They are also linked in the validation app, which I will show to you as well. And you need to be aware of the most relevant terms. First, we distinguish between replication versus reproduction. Replication is whenever a study is testing a previously published claim again with different data, and reproduction is with the same data. That means if somebody uses the same data again, writes new code, takes the same code, does some alterations, recreates code, whatever, as long as they use the same data, even if it's just a subset, we call it a reproduction. If they add new data to it, then it's a replication already. If they collect new data, then it's replication as well. If it's a panel study and they take a new wave, a different one than the one that was used before, then it's also a replication. It doesn't matter if it's secondary data or if it was collected for this, as long as the data is different, we call it a replication. In economics, all the studies are called replications, but most of them are reproductions. In psychology, most of the cases people make the same distinction. The farther you go back, the less clear it is. So that is something you will have to check. We will show you an abstract of something that self-identifies as a replication, and we will ask you, is this actually a replication? Then the outcome for this, we will take a look at a few example outcomes. This is a work in progress app, an interface to view the cases. And there, just take a look at a few outcome quotes to get a sense of what they should be like. So here, for example, they say, we found support for the status enhancement hypothesis. That's a possible outcome. Here they say the association between the variables replicated in an independent cohort consistent with previous literature. So they also make sure that this is actually a replication. And then for failure, it's also mostly quite clear. Our analysis fails to corroborate the results. In this case, maybe an additional sentence would have been useful. The most difficult cases will be mixed. So lots of the lots of the times you have phrases that are a bit vague. So let's look at this one. Showed limited reproducibility, although the overall clustering pattern was preserved. So one could say, well, the overall pattern was preserved, so it's a success, isn't it? But then why should they have led with limited reproducibility? And as you can see, it is a replication, we checked it, but they label it reproducibility. So the terminology is not used consistently. You have to make sure that it is the correct type of study. And then in such a case, I recommend that you also leave a note and say, this is coded as mixed, but one could also say that, and share with us your thoughts. Then it's possible that you get a registered report. That's something where no data has been collected yet. So make sure, if you don't know what registered reports are, to take a look at it, take a few minutes and learn about it. It's a very useful publication format. You should try it out yourself if you publish research. And then also, in case you don't get a published version, a publisher version of a manuscript, so you will see a replication article, and there will be a DOI that will link you through the article page. And then this article page can be on the website from an academic journal, but it can also be on a preprint server. So you should know what a preprint server is, what it looks like, and that a preprint server does not always have the most recent version of a manuscript. On OSF preprint servers, you have a field that says DOI published, but even if a preprint has been published later, the DOI is often not updated. So do a quick literature search, check if you are seeing a preprint, check if there's a publisher version that's available as well. And generally, when working on the data, please overshare. We have an extra field for notes, please use it. Every entry will be is validated by 2 people, and currently there's also an admin approving everything. In the future, we may have automated procedures that if there are no disagreements, then the double validated entry goes straight into the database. And then consider that based on the database, we are posting PubPeer comments saying there's a replication of this original study, and then we link to the replication study, put the reference there, put the outcome quote there. So this has to be correct. It will spark public discourse, which we also want. We want to put attention on replications, but everything needs to be correct. So what can we give you for working with us on this? No money, unfortunately, but what we can give you is contributorship. And there we have the rule, you can become a contributor for 5 correct new submissions. For these, of course, you have to check if the articles are already in the database, or 20 consistent validations. If you decide to become a contributor, you will, and you do the 20 consistent validations, you will appear on the FORRT contributor page, which is currently filtered from the databases, and then it will say you contributed to this project with validation. So there's also a FLoRA citation. Everybody who uses the data, we encourage them to cite FLoRA, and there your name will be included as well. And then we plan to write up a data paper. We already did so 2 years ago. That has become the most viewed paper of the entire journal in which we published it. We try to do this again, although now with a much bigger database, so about 2 or 3 times the size. And everybody who is a contributor will be invited to become a co-author. But just so that you already know, we will not submit this paper to Nature, and most likely not to any other APC or subscription-based journal. People are already using FLoRA, so the project that you contribute to is something that is visible. The predecessor from which FLoRA inherited most of half of its data, FRED, has been used for the COSS Smart Competition. We have a Zotero plugin with lots of downloads. We have a Replication Atlas interface, a meta-check module that automatically rechecks for replications, and lots of other projects in the works or finished. Last but not least, the Guess the Replication game, where you can guess replication outcomes based on title and abstract. Alright, now I will walk you through the FLoRA validation. And there's this app. We will send you the link. You will have to log in. And when you log in for the first time, there will be a short walkthrough. And then you will see this page. There's a leaderboard here. If you're into this competitive side, there are FAQs that we ask you to read, especially everything above search strategy. So the upper part is FAQs on coding and validation, so what you are doing. And then on the left side you see the data, on the right side you do the checks. If you have a question, you can press the help button and send us an email or write into the Slack channel. If you want to check something, you should click at least on the DOI button and check it out in your browser. And it's possible that you do not have access to the article. Some cases require access. So for example, you may have to check if the reference for the original study is the correct one, and in some cases the references are not openly available. So in this case, you may have to skip the entry. You award points. These do not take into account though whether you made an error or not. That's something we are testing with humans, with admins ourselves. Alright, so let's go through this case. We have the title here, and this is a very nice case because the title already tells us a lot. It tells us it is a replication, it is a conceptual one, so we know it's not reproduction because there are no conceptual reproductions, and it specifies the target study. If this were not the case, there were a few other indicators of how to know that there is a target study. So check in the text. I usually go to the website and also put into my browser with Control and F in the search function the replica. And here you can see it's from the OSF. That means this is a preprint. It's also versionized. We see it's 3 years old, so we should definitely check if there's a published version of that. And it looks like there is attentional bias to uncertainty. The authors are still loading. Morris, Lee, and Wood. Morris, Lee, Wood. Alright, so a very interesting case. There's a preprint, but what we want is also the publisher version. And that's the first thing I'm writing down. And for the published version, let's take the DOI. That's always the safest way. Also for DOIs, please make sure that they actually work. Some articles have DOIs, but they are broken, and then we need to take a URL. So if it wasn't clear that this was a replication, we would also check out the methods and see if they collected new data, for example. Alright, so we can also fix typos in the abstract, edit the abstract. Let's just take this one, just in case they changed something. Looks a bit different. Then we have to click save. It's important, or otherwise we won't be able to submit later. And to get the correct original study, here we can again see we sought to conceptually replicate Fergus et al. So this is the study we want to see in the other window. And the easiest way, I could start and compare everything, but if I click on this DOI from the references and on that DOI, I can see this is the exact same website. So this is the correct match. It's also possible that the years are different. So it's actually the case here. They say 2013, but this says 2012. So the title is correct, the original is correct, and they are still diverging. That's just because maybe they are not citing the online version, but the print version. But it's okay like this. Okay, next is the outcome. They say it's a failure. This is the original study, this is the replication. And here we can see we partially replicated the studies. And this can take more or less time, depending on how clear it is. In very clear failures and successes, this can take a few seconds. If it's mixed, we may have to go back to this one and check what this article was about, what this is about, and then if you're unsure, leave a note. And then the next question is, how much of the quote is irrelevant? And this is the minimum part, but you could also take more. There's also already a part here. And here they say we failed to replicate. So let's check for this. And apparently, maybe because this is the final published version, not the preprint, they changed how they described it. So we will have to stick to the version of record, the most recent version, the published version. And then we say, no, this is mischaracterized. This is actually mixed. So if you cannot click submit, you can also go back here and see if something is not clicked yet. And then you can say outcome quote should be this. And then if you're done, again, make sure that everything's correct. To make sure to double check everything. And then if you're done, you can click submit. And then we have confetti, you get the points, and you get the next one. If you are inactive for 25 minutes, there's a window opening up saying, are you still there? If you are inactive for 30 minutes, the entry that is now assigned to you will be assigned to somebody else, and when you go back to the window, there will be a new study. So at the same time, it shouldn't take you longer than 30 minutes. For the first few entries, maybe it can take up to 20 minutes or 25 minutes even. Later, an entry will take between 5 and 10 minutes, I think. It depends a lot, of course, on the different entries. Some are very simple, so here again we have a conceptual replication, we have the target study named. Those are quite simple cases. You will also encounter very, very difficult cases where you have to read through parts of the manuscript to determine what was actually the target study. And then you can also end up saying, no, that there is no specific target study. This is a replication of a theory or a set of findings. And then this will not be a replication and also not a reproduction. All right, that's it for the onboarding. We are looking forward to working with you. Thank you for your interest in FLoRA. And as I said, reach out to us, write us an email, join the FORRT Slack, visit us, join the co-working session. And then we hope you decide to contribute to FLoRA and help us manage this big database. Thank you.